up on this Friday edition of Newsline at noon, South Korea and the United States will go ahead with their planned military drills next month, despite Pyongyang's proposal that the two Koreas stop any actions increasing tensions between them. Japan comes under pressure to apologize for its wartime sex crimes after both the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives pass a bill requiring Tokyo to say sorry. Plus, the leaders of Korea and India agreed to expand their economic ties by removing investment barriers and enhancing the comprehensive economic partnership deal between the two nations. These stories and more on Newsline at noon. Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon. I'm Choi Yusan in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. We start with South Korea's eagerly awaited response to North Korea's proposal to end all cross-border slandering and to reduce military tensions.
Seoul's Unification Ministry says Pyongyang should start showing its sincerity through actions and not just words, and that its annual military drills with Washington will take place next month as scheduled. Our Hwang Sung-hee has the details.
A day after North Korea made what it called an important proposal to stop cross-border slanging matches, South Korea expressed its regret over Pyongyang's attempts to mislead the South Korean public by distorting the facts. Unification Ministry spokesperson Kim Eui-do said Friday that it was North Korea that violated a similar inter-Korean agreement in the past.
North Korea called for an end to cross-border slandering in its New Year's speech 2 weeks ago, but it still throws insults and threatens South Korea. The North must remember that trust between the two Koreas will be built through action and not through words.
In its proposal Thursday, the North's National Defense Committee suggested the two Koreas stop throwing insults at each other as of January 30th. The North also said it would initiate steps to ease military tensions if Seoul called off its annual joint military exercises with Washington that take place in early spring. This offer was also flatly turned down by the South.
Our military drills are annual defensive training exercises carried out by a sovereign state, and we officially notify neighboring countries, including North Korea, every year, as is the international custom.
In regards to North Korea's nuclear program, Seoul said Pyongyang is threatening peace on the Korean peninsula with its nuclear ambitions, and added the regime must take practical steps towards denuclearization. As for the resumption of family reunions for those separated since the Korean War, South Korea says it is a humanitarian issue that should be dealt with separately from political tensions. It said a swift resumption of the reunions would be a first step toward friendlier inter-Korean relations. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
Japan is almost certainly going to come under greater international pressure to acknowledge its wartime atrocities after the U.S. House and now the Senate passed a bill that urges Japan to apologize for its sexual enslavement of women. Han Da-eun has more.
The U.S. Senate, for the first time in the history of U.S. legislation, has included the issue of the so-called comfort women in its spending bill. On Thursday local time, the Senate passed a bill that calls on the Japanese government to stick to a 2007 resolution which urged Tokyo to issue an official apology for its wartime sexual enslavement of women. The bill also calls on the U.S. Secretary of State to encourage Japan to address the issues raised in the resolution. Comfort women euphemistically refers to women forced into sexual slavery by the Japanese military during the Second World War. An estimated 200,000 women, mostly Korean, are known to have been abused as sex slaves by Japanese troops in the early 20th century. The bill will be taken to the White House for President Barack Obama's signature on Friday. Despite such an unprecedented call from the U.S. to apologize, some Japanese politicians are going in the opposite direction. A group of Japanese lawmakers who claim a comfort woman statue erected in the U.S. city of Glendale should be removed stormed into Glendale City Hall on Thursday to file a complaint. City officials, however, refused to meet them, saying there was no reason to remove the statue as it was built for humanitarian reasons. But the Japanese group didn't stop here. They waved Japanese flags and took pictures in front of the statue, to the shock of passers-by. Attention is now focused on how the Japanese government will react following Washington's passing of the bill. 한다은, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S. state of Virginia, a bill on identifying the body of water between Korea and Japan as both the East Sea and the Sea of Japan in local public school textbooks is moving through the state legislature. The bill submitted by Democrat David Marsden was passed on Thursday with bipartisan support in a vote of 9-4 by the Virginia Senate's Education and Health Committee. If passed by the full Senate and the lower house of the legislature, the bill could take effect as early as July. This is the second attempt to pass the bill after it was voted down 2 years ago. Japan is reportedly trying to block the bill by actively lobbying Virginia lawmakers in both the upper and lower house. Korea considers the name Sea of Japan as a legacy of Japan's imperialistic past.
In New Delhi, President Park Geun-hye held summit talks with Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh on Thursday. The two leaders agreed to upgrade their trade agreement as soon as possible and take necessary measures to nurture a favourable business environment for investors in both countries. Our Ojinju, who is travelling with the President, sent us this report.
President Park's visit to India aims at laying the path for Korean firms to more easily enter the world's second-largest market by population. One of the most notable accomplishments of the summit talks between President Park and Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh on Thursday was the two leaders deciding to quickly upgrade the Korea-India Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, or CEPA, so that it covers not only goods but also investments and services.
한인도 포괄적 경제 동반자 협정 개선 작업을 가능한 빠른 시일 내에 완료하기 위해 최대한 노력하기로 하였습니다.
The two countries will be holding ministerial-level talks on the matter in March. Both leaders also agreed to revise the tax treaty between the two nations to reduce the tax burden on Korean and Indian companies operating in each other's countries and to prevent double taxation.
양국 간의 투자 확대 및 영업 환경 개선에 중요한 토대를 마련한 것을 의미 있게 생각합니다.
President Park has also sought an expansion in financial support for Korean firms willing to take part in infrastructure projects in India, part of its 5-year development plan, with MOUs having been signed between Korea's Exim Bank and Indian financial institutions. POSCO's stall project to build a steel mill in the Indian state of Odisha looks like it's finally back on track, with President Park securing promises from the Indian government to resolve the obstacles that have been blocking progress for roughly 9 years now. The Korean steel giant was granted an environmental clearance for the 2,700 acres of land required for the project and also secured a promise from the Odisha state government to grant POSCO a prospecting license for an iron ore mine some 300 kilometers from the steel mill. On Friday, President Park will attend events that are focused on cooperation in the sector of the creative economy and meet with Indian business leaders to call for further investment in Korea. Ojinju, Arirang News, New Delhi.
3 sitting lawmakers have lost their seats in Korea's parliament after the Supreme Court on Thursday found them guilty of illegal electioneering. This means the rival parties will have to prepare for by-elections on top of local elections set for June. Kim Eui-do reports.
It was the last thing Korea's major political parties wanted. But with the removal of 3 lawmakers on Thursday, by-elections will have to be held. The lawmakers told to clear their desks were found guilty of illegal electioneering ahead of the 2012 general elections. One of the 3 was a proportional representative, which means the person next in line on the ruling party's proportional representation ticket will automatically assume her position. But the constituencies previously represented by the 2 other lawmakers will have to elect a new lawmaker in July. At least 6 other lawmakers face the possibility of losing their seats on similar illegal electioneering charges and are awaiting the Supreme Court's final verdict. Political watchers say the shakeup means up to 15 seats could be up for grabs for the July by-election. By-elections are usually held twice a year in April and in October, but this year, the first by-election should be held on July 30th. This is because of a special provision that says a by-election should be held the first Wednesday that falls 50 days after local elections. This means, theoretically, that Korea will have 3 elections in the span of 5 months. The June 4th local elections, a by-election on July 30th, and another by-election on October 29th. The rival parties agree that they should reduce the number of elections from the current 3 to 2, but they differ on how to go about it. The ruling Saenuri party says the June local elections and the July by-election should be combined and held together in June. But the main opposition Democratic Party says the 2 by-elections should be combined and held in October. The rival parties have agreed to discuss the matter next week at the Special Parliamentary Committee to Reform Politics. Although both parties say their proposal is the best to reduce administrative costs and voter fatigue, pundits say their own political interests have certainly been taken into consideration. Kim Eui-do, Arirang News.
With the once red-hot smartphone market settling into slower growth, the information technology industry will explore new frontiers this year. In the last but not least of our 5-part industry series, our Yoo-Rian tells us what's up and coming in the IT industry.
2014 will be the year when wearable technology takes off. Samsung burst onto the smartwatch scene last year.
Hey, pretty lady.
But the electronic giant's tagline haven't really worked with consumers. The company recently rolled out an upgraded Galaxy Gear smartwatch that allows users to control home appliances by remote. And with the Apple iWatch and Google Glass due to hit shelves this year, the stage has been set for a fierce competition to win consumers over with the latest wearable gadgets.
We need to build our own software for wearables. While Samsung's smartwatch is powered by Google Android, Google Glass uses its own software.
Korean companies are also jumping into another hot battleground this year, the so-called IoT market, or Internet of Things, connecting objects to objects. Take this service, for example. Press a button on your smartphone, and your car engine starts. If someone tries to break into your car, an alarm goes off in the car and on your smartphone.
By combining our IoT technology and a car servicing company, we've created a new service that allows you to monitor your car wherever you are.
Now, there's a familiar area in which electronics companies will try to make a comeback, and that's TVs. Ultra-high-definition TVs, to be exact. Ultra HD TVs offer 4 times the resolution of regular HD TVs, and the technology is expected to be the main driver of TV sales this year, especially with the upcoming Winter Olympics and World Cup. IT products by Samsung and other Korean companies were major contributors to the Korean economy in 2013.
Exports of IT products reached a record high last year, making up nearly a third of the country's overall exports. But Korea faces new challenges this year, with smartphones no longer considered a safe cash cow. The big question is, will Korean players remain as movers and shakers of the industry? Yoo-Rian, Arirang News.
4 leaders of the state rail company's labor union have been formally detained for further questioning for their alleged role in organizing the nation's longest ever rail strike. The 4 Korail union members, including leader Kim Myung-hwan, were put under detention immediately after the Seoul Western District Court approved the police's request for arrest warrants. The judge says all 4 played key roles in the 22-day strike, and there was concern they could try to flee or tamper with evidence. The court dismissed the request to issue warrants for 5 other union leaders. 13 union members voluntarily turned themselves in on Tuesday after defying police summons and taking refuge in several groups in different locations, even after the strike ended on December 30th.
Some others for your fill of Korean and international news. Join Chae Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. Newsline at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
Now, turnout was low, but the roughly 40% of Egyptians who did head to the polls this week overwhelmingly backed the interim government's new constitution. Supporters of ousted Islamist President Mohamed Morsi and his Muslim Brotherhood boycotted the vote. Son Jung-in has the details.
Preliminary tallies indicate that more than 90% of the people who voted in Egypt are in support of the interim government's newly proposed constitution, according to state media reports. Egyptians formed long lines outside polling stations in major urban areas on Tuesday and Wednesday, and the turnout in Cairo and Alexandria was about 40%, which is higher than in a 2012 referendum on the Islamist-backed constitution. It was the first vote since Islamist President Mohamed Morsi was ousted by the military last July. The new constitution guarantees greater protection for the freedoms of belief and speech. It also guarantees equality between men and women and bans political parties from being formed based on religion, race, or geography. The overwhelming outcome nudges Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi a step closer to running for president. Experts say Sisi, who is extremely popular among his supporters, appears the only serious candidate, but he hasn't yet indicated whether he will run. The vote did not come without some resistance from Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood, which had called for a boycott. On the first day of voting, 9 people died in clashes involving Morsi's supporters. And on Thursday, students rallied outside the University of Cairo, resulting in confrontations with security forces that left 1 person dead and 4 injured. Some 400 people are said to have been arrested during the 2-day referendum for disrupting the vote. Mohamed Morsi, who was Egypt's first democratically elected president, is being held in jail in Alexandria and faces several criminal charges relating to his time in office. The Election Commission said the official results of the referendum will be announced Saturday evening local time, when it will also announce the date for presidential and parliamentary elections. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Russia has reiterated calls for Iran to be involved in the upcoming Syria peace talks set to open in Switzerland next week. Meeting with Iranian and Syrian counterparts in Moscow, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Russia, Iran and Syria share common ground with the United Nations on resolving the Syrian conflict. He also sought to play down claims that Russia was hatching a kind of secret trilateral project with Syria and Iran. The US and Britain are partially objected to Iranian participation at the talks. US Secretary of State John Kerry has again called on members of the Syrian opposition to come to Switzerland next week. The Syrian National Coalition, rife with internal divisions, will make its decision later on this Friday.
The Roman Catholic Church has come under unprecedented public questioning by the United Nations over its past child sex abuse scandals. In testimony to a UN committee in Geneva on Thursday, several Vatican officials, including UN Ambassador Archbishop Silvano Tomasi, expressed remorse over the scandals and said such crimes can never be excused. They also said the Church had learned from its mistakes and had taken action to prevent future abuse. Many activists remain unhappy, however, saying there were no clear answers on questions like how child abusers were punished. The panel also criticized the Vatican for not revealing any specific information about past incidents. Dust levels in Beijing have dropped since yesterday, when they were at their highest since January of last year. The U.S. Embassy in Beijing said the level of ultra-fine dust particles on Friday was hovering at 160 micrograms per cubic meter. Dust levels on Thursday exceeded 670 micrograms per cubic meter, 27 times the level recommended by the World Health Organization, causing Chinese officials to close roads because of reduced visibility. The smog from Beijing has also made its way to Korea, where particular levels are 5 times higher than what is considered safe by the WHO. Current concentration levels in both countries could cause health problems, including throat and eye irritation.
A total fire ban was issued on Friday in southeastern Australia, which is facing some of its worst fire conditions in 5 years. Scorching temperatures have set bushfires across swathes of the region, with 2 forming a 15-square-kilometre blaze that is threatening a popular national park in the state of Victoria. Emergency warnings have been issued for fires in the eastern part of the state, and residents have been urged to evacuate in the northwest. Adelaide was declared the hottest city in the world on Thursday, with a temperature recorded at 44.2 degrees Celsius. Matches were suspended at the Australian Open in Melbourne, with temperatures there reaching nearly 44 degrees Celsius. Now, the Academy Award nominations often throw up a few surprises, some good, some bad, and this year is no exception. David O. Russell's American Hustle and Alfonso Cuarón's Gravity both received the most nominations, with 10 nods each, followed by 12 Years a Slave with 9. The star of 12 Years a Slave, Chiwetel Ejiofor, is one of this year's nominees for Best Actor in a Leading Role, along with Christian Bale for American Hustle, Leonardo DiCaprio for Wolf of Wall Street, and Matthew McConaughey for Dallas Buyers Club. Many fans were shocked to see Tom Hanks miss out for his role in Saving Mr. Banks, although his co-star Emma Thompson was nominated for leading actress. The 86th Academy Awards takes place on March 2nd at the Dolby Theatre in Los Angeles.
And time now to get an update on the weather with our Lee Ji-yeon at the Weather Center. Hello there, Ji-yeon.
Happy Friday, Mark and Yusun. Well, it's been 17 days since New Year, which also means students who are on winter vacation will have to go back to school in 2 to 3 weeks.
Well, time really does fly, doesn't it?
Right.
I'm sure they'll be looking for ways to enjoy these last few days of freedom they have.
Well, I think so too. And for those of you who are looking for some memorable things to do with your family or friends before the end of the winter break, there are several snow and ice festivals going on this weekend in Gangwon-do and Chungcheong-do and other regions around the country. So check those out. Besides, the weather will certainly be nice on the weekend and today, but you will want to be careful because the level of ultra-fine dust will remain moderately high in most regions. It should get better towards the late afternoon though. However, people down south will have to deal with the dusty air all day long, and it looks like there won't be much sun there either. And tomorrow will be just a tad colder, and the high in Seoul should be about 2 degrees lower than today. In fact, this weekend will be slightly chillier than it has been the last couple of days, but temperatures should still stay in the positives under mostly to partly sunny skies, and the air quality should be normal. So please keep that in mind, and here are the readings for today. The afternoon high in Seoul will get up to 4, and both Daegu and Gwangju will peak at 7, while Busan will top out at 9 with patches of clouds. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju will climb up to 7 in the afternoon. Daejeon will get up to 6, while the top temperature on Kumgangsan Mountain will be at -2. Now that's all from me this week. Hope you have a wonderful weekend, and back to Mark and Yusun in the studio.
Well, thank you very much for the weather there, Ji-yeon, and those are the stories we're following at this hour. But if you do want to rewatch our clips of our show, you can always access our VOD service at arirangtv.com.
Mark and I will be back at noon on Monday, but in the meantime, stay with Arirang for the day's headlines.